Hello, friends, and welcome to Hocus Focus, mystical tools for spiritual explorers. I'm waving my wand. My name is Megan Rounds, and welcome to today's show. Today's topic is letting it go, releasing residual energy, with guest Kori Stephens. And I'm super excited for today's topic. I think it's going to be pretty amazing, and Kori has offered to lead us in a meditation as well, so I think it's going to be fabulous. Well, I don't think it, I know it. When today's guest first went off to college, she had signed up to study Hindi and was planning to travel to India to study shamanism. But her life took a curvy path from there through international business, teaching, and the current work she now does as an advocate for vulnerable children. More recently, she has really tuned into her calling to become a healer, which, as you'll learn, is showing up in beautiful and bold ways. She's an intuitive, healer, light worker, and green witch with a wide variety of spiritual interests, including magic, green witchcraft, energy and energy healing, Akashic records, ancestral lineage, and channeling. On top of that, she's a certified life coach, Dragon Tree life coach and illuminator, and owns her own spiritual business, Whole Mama Project, which empowers mothers in their own rebirth, alignment, healing, and awakening through a heart-centered membership, sacred gatherings, and holistic coaching. Last but not at all least, she's also a community-supported postpartum facilitator and birth and postpartum doula, where she holds space and rites of passage for mothers and babies. This is a woman who really knows how to walk her talk. So let's get this party started by welcoming friend, neighbor, and fellow spiritual explorer, Kori Stephens. Wonderful. Hi, Kori.
Hi.
Oh,
Hello.
hi.
That is really lovely to hear you say those things.
Well, thank you for providing me with the details. But yes, it's one of my
Yeah.
favorite things to pull together introductions for people. It's really a joy. And, even though we're neighbors, I really didn't know a lot of that about you. So it was fun to read about that as well. So, and I should add that Kori we haven't scheduled the date yet, but Kori's going to come on for a mashup. So we'll get to hear more about her spiritual journey too, which is going to be really fun. But for today, thank you again for being here and for sharing your wisdom with us. And our topic is letting it go and releasing residual energy. I thought we'd start by just a general question about what that means to you. I know what I
Great
have in my own mind about what that is, but I'd really like to hear what it means to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me too. It has been such a joy to get to watch all of your other friends and presenters come on and learn so much from them. So this is just such an awesome opportunity. So thank you.
My pleasure.
When I think about releasing residual energy, I truly believe that we carry so much with us, right? Like we carry so much energy and story and narrative, and we soak in other people's energy too, unwillingly sometimes, but we kind of take it on. And so a lot of my work over the last couple of years and just kind of really fine-tuning over the last year is how do we break free from that? Like, how do we release it, uncover it, take it all off so that we can actually have more clarity around what we want, where we're going, and how to get there? Because when that energy is in the way, it's really clouding what is important for us to do and to birth into this world.
Very much so. I completely agree. I think it's one of our shared interests, and we have many, but energy in general is something that I've been fascinated by for quite some time. And I love the way you describe it as cloudy, when it's something that we don't know that we have, whether it's inherited or taken on or been exposed to in some way, shape, or form. And so can you say more about what you've observed as to even how you know when those things are happening?
Oh, such a good question. So I really believe that our energy work is really tuned in. it's very body focused and understanding where we hold it in our bodies. And it's also really connected to our intuition. And I think that understanding energy, body, intuition, kind of like mind, body, spirit in a way, is really important to being able to recognize when we're holding things that we no longer need to be holding. Yeah, so I feel like the answer is complicated because I think we do actually walk around most of the time disconnected from that, disconnected from the sensations we feel in our body when we know that something is stagnant or it's blocked or it's heavy and it's weighing on us, and that there's so many practices to help us to actually understand where those things are living in our bodies and to feel when that energy that we've like taken on that energy and we need to give it up. So for me, it's really sensation based and attached to that intuition. So it's sensation based and then using our intuition to really understand the sensation.
And so thank you. I think that I mean, it resonates so strongly with me. As someone, and I may have mentioned this a couple of times here or there, but more recently than not, I've really become aware of how disconnected I've been from my own physical body. That for a good portion of my life, I have been, I call it different things, but it could be la la land, daydreaming, very future oriented. So I've lived in the future way more than in the present, sometimes in the past, but not as much as the future. And I've realized that is a go-to thing to help me cope with not really wanting to always be present in my physical space. And a part of that is detaching from my physical body and really learning. And I don't exactly have a way of how I learned it other than just repetition, to ignore my intuitive voice when it comes to the sensations I've felt in my body and the sensitivities that I've had towards that energy that has, been absorbed by me. So thank you, because I think it's such a key and important part. And what was can you say that 3-piece thing again? So it was...
So for me, it's body, energy,
there we go,
and intuition. Yeah, and you could probably overlay those on mind, body, spirit. Like spirit really connected to our intuition, body, and then and I think what I'm learning to embrace, so I'm a Taurus, I was born in May, and therefore my sign is Earth.
Yeah.
I'm an Earth sign, right? Which is very much like physical embodiment, material world, nature, and it's just been recently that I've learned to really understand what that means and how I navigate through the world. So how I feel energy is in my body. And then I think for other people, it might feel different, right? Like we might have very different experiences or interpretations based on what our connection is to understanding how these things live within us.
I love that you brought that up. In fact, I was trying to remember to ask you what your what your sign was, because it's something I'd like to begin incorporating into the introductions, and then I forgot. But so you tapped into that. Thank you for mentioning it. I'm a Gemini, so I'm an air sign. And I think that actually brings forth some of the differences that you and I might feel. I have a strong connection to the earth, and I always have, but my consciousness in a way is, I mean, I have to have air. I mean, like almost always fresh air. I cannot be in a place like in the summer. I have to have like windows open. I don't care at all about air conditioning until it's like 100 degrees and we're all, especially our dogs are like, please, that's like when I'll finally put it on, because otherwise I have to be around the air. I have to have flowing air for me to feel calm. And I've gotten to the point now where I created a Spotify playlist of nature sounds. So at first it starts out with birds chirping, and then there's one track I found that I didn't even realize at first has these ducks that are having some kind of debate. It's really, it's like, wow, that duck has really got something to say. But I've done it where I start out with earth, and then I go to water, I think, and then I go to air, and then I go to fire. And so I have tracks of all of those nature sounds and just keep repeating them. And I find that especially in winter, it helps me so much because otherwise I lose sight of, I get disconnected again from that whole
Yeah.
elemental circle.
Yeah. Yeah. I can totally get that too. And there's, yeah, and I think there's different comfort levels too,
Yeah.
right? So your comfort level might not be in the body. And so what are some things that for people who aren't comfortable being in bodies, in our body, how do we actually get connected to that energy? And I actually have like a super simple thing that we can do right now just to feel like the energy.
Let's.
Do you want to do
Yeah.
it? Okay. So you want to hold your hands, one facing down and one facing up like this. And just to pulse your hands together and then flip them.
Ooh.
And we're just going to do this for a minute. And then flip. And flip. And now, without shaking out your hands or anything like that, what you're going to do is you're going to open your palms and bring them together until you feel that pull. For some people, it's really close. You can feel the magnetization between your hands. Are you feeling that?
Yeah.
And then you can kind of play with it, right? Like you can expand, you can come closer. And that's it. Like that's the energy in our body, right? Like
Yep.
that is everywhere. And sometimes I think when we're floating way out in space, we need to do these things that bring us in. And so this for me is just a really simple exercise of just feeling it. And like we're not even touching our hands, but it's pulsing there, right?
Yes. And it's, for me, it gets really warm.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
yeah.
and if I'm quiet enough, if I'm not moving around a lot, if there's not a lot of external noise and movement, I can feel the vibration as well. And I think that's actually starting to get stronger for me because I work with energy too. And that's like, I think this is such a great example of how, okay, I don't want to go on a rant, but we've been brought to believe that, or led to believe that all there is physical reality. The things we can see, hear, smell, touch, taste. And I like to add feel, but that's not really a part of those senses. Feel is an energy, right? Feelings, emotions, things like that. But there are so many things that emotions impact, but also energy in general. If we walk into a room where there's been trauma in the not so distant past, we may not realize it, but we're pulled towards it, or we're affected by it. And or like the example people often use is walking into a room where people have had an argument. And I remember one specifically where a friend was coming in after an argument had taken place in the workplace, and she automatically knew something was going on. She's like, "What's up?" But everybody was just sitting there like this. They were in their own heads, but they weren't really. There wasn't a whole lot of body language or anything else. It was just she picked up on that heavy emotion. And the fact that we've been for so long led to believe that, to discount it, to me is what I'm really amazed and excited about these days, is because there's so much more awareness around the effects those things are having on us. And the awareness is great, but I love that you're introducing ways to recognize it and to work with it and to release it, especially because we absorb half of those things thinking it's us.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so I think that's totally right. And I think that, the first step is the awareness.
Yeah.
It's being able to name it without judgment and to move into it.
Yeah.
Because I do think sometimes when we feel like maybe there's an energetic imbalance in our body, we're not like excited to go there because we might be uncovering things that feel really uncomfortable when we actually get into the sensation. So if we're feeling, and I just got like tingles all over my body from saying that. If we're feeling like we are trapped or we're stuck and we're tired, I work with a lot of people who are doing incredible work with kids who've experienced trauma. And they move like so quickly through the world, just like one kid to the next kid to the next kid. And they've taken on so much of that, but there's an unwillingness to get in there to feel what it is. And as long as we're going to ignore the feeling, it's going to stay, right? If we're going to ignore the energy that's existing, even if it's joy, if we're not allowing ourselves to feel joy and allow that energy to come through, because we're like, well, I can't feel this because tomorrow my kids are going to get sick, or I can't feel this because I'm going to lose my job, or, we're so quick to do that. But if we don't allow it to actually feel, it can't move through us. It's just going to like stay stuck and stagnant and create all these blocks.
Yes, I completely agree. I'm just, we haven't talked about this before, but it almost would seem that way because this, I've for a while now had this, I kind of look at it as blocking, absorbing, and then letting it pass through. And when we block that energy or those emotions, it just keeps coming. It keeps knocking on the door. It's not going to take no for an answer. Yeah. It's like, you're letting me in, one way or the other, I'm coming. I'm going to, it's like the Three Little Pigs in a way. It's like, I'm going to break that door down. And usually when it comes back, it's at the least opportune time ever. It could be like right before you're supposed to do a public speech and all of a sudden, whoosh, and overwhelmed, highly emotional, not being able to center, all of those things. And absorbing is a thing that I know especially empaths have a tendency to do, but I believe we all have that propensity in some way, shape, or form to just bring it in and hold it. Sometimes it's a great way to process. Sometimes it's necessary to hold it until it's run its course. But I think for a lot of us, it just stays. And at some point it almost becomes like a habit of thought, and like a mindset, which, it becomes so habitual that we don't even know it's there. And yet it's become a part of us to the point where we don't even know that we need to let it go. And I think that's where that allowing ourselves to feel emotions really comes in, because I think for me, at least speaking personally, I learned to push all of those emotions away, try to push them away. And it always would come back at the worst times, with crying especially. It now it's great information for me, because when I tear up, I know it's something I need to work on. But it used to just frustrate me, because I'm like, why am I the only one crying here? Everybody in my classes, my cohorts and things are like, yeah, that's Megan.
Oh my gosh,
on her to cry. But and then when I started to try to allow myself to feel joy, I found it was really hard, even though I thought I did that. But it was like, I just never wanted to go there. And I didn't realize how much I did that.
Right. We can't censor one emotion and allow the other ones through. Yeah. Like, it's all, if we're like, we don't want to feel this energy, well, we're not going to feel any other energy at that peak level either. And I think we start to see that manifest in our body. And that's where the sensation piece comes in for me. Sometimes it gets to a point where it's like, it needs your attention immediately. And then we get sick. We have an injury. We're not watching where we're going. We fall, all of these different things that just kind of manifest there in the sensation piece. If we're not addressing them.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, so why? Okay, well, you've already really answered this, but I'm going to ask it anyway, just to see if anything else comes up. And that is, why is this so important?
Oh, so many reasons. Well, I think a couple things. I think of it as our individual work, but I also think of it as community work. So individually, we're responsible for our own energy, right? Like, we are responsible for doing the work to clear it, setting our intentions, right? Everything you do in your Monday, momoma.
Thank you.
Right? Like, we have to release to receive, and it's this constant cycle, and we are responsible for that. And so I think understanding and learning tools that help you to do that and to continue to have that clear channel will be beneficial in so many ways, because it actually allows us, again, kind of that clarity piece to know, to trust, and to know what we need to bring into this world, how we need to be, where we want to go, all of these things from a very individual level. I think that's important. From a community level, I think we're really used to taking on other people's stuff that we don't need to take on. And it actually, how that happens, and if I could create a visual, is it kind of creates a mirror for them to see it, and then they can't release it either. So let's say I'm having a conversation with a coworker who's like just pissed. Like they just are not happy about something. They're like letting it all out. They're venting it all. I'm receiving that and it's sitting right here. So like imagine as they're talking, that energy is coming out, maybe in a particular color, maybe it's red or blue, and you receive it in your body and you're like, oh, what do I do with this? And like, you're just thinking, how do I work with this? How do I respond? And that's actually getting mirrored back to them. So they're not able to release it either because they're just seeing it in you. And so what I have really been practicing on is how do you actually ground in so that it releases, it comes through you, you channel it down and release it. So as that energy, if you're seeing it as a particular color is coming in, you know, listening, being there, holding space, but then allowing that to go down and ground out, you'll actually start to visually see that person's energy empty. Instead of them holding in this like reciprocal, like, I see it, I'm still angry, da 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 da. It's actually going to come through you and down and out.
I just want to jump out of my chair. I've got truth chills galore because it's like this warm. I was warm before, but now I'm like, man, I'm getting goosebumps. But you just answered a really big issue for me, and I think this is a really great thing around releasing energy in general, but also to create more cohesion in the community, in like a family setting or in those types of places where there can be tension. Sometimes I'm triggered. Okay.
Oh yeah.
And when I am triggered, sometimes I'm in the right place of mind where I can still sit with it and I can hold that space for the person, but sometimes I can't and I push back. And so then you have this, like playing ball with each other kind of. And then there's that other time about taking on people's stuff, like you had said, but it's almost like they're throwing the ball and you hold it and they never get it back. And then you're just stuck with the ball. It's like being stuck with the bill. Who's gonna, well, some people do volunteer for that, which is awesome, but it's like nobody, if you think there's a game, it's not really being played the way that everybody agrees it is. But I love the idea of, so for me, I don't really see the colors. I do later upon reflection, but what I do see, it's almost like I can see internally, like in a clairvoyant way, what this energy looks like. And so the other day somebody was frustrated and annoyed and they were like, blah, 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 blah. And I could see this like jagged energy. It's all clear, but it's like, I think it's, and I can feel it too. So I can feel the effect it has on my energy field. And, and I was like so fascinated by it. I would not normally do this, but I'm like, hey, dude, can you tell, I can see your energy and it's like really jagged. Do you know you're having that effect on other people? Which he totally didn't want to hear at the time, because, it's
no, they never do.
And here I am, hey, man, this is really fascinating to me. But what I love is that idea of receiving and allowing it to pass, to actually have that as almost like a loop. But in a good loop, a positive feedback loop. And so I'm visualizing it as a loop, speaking totally off the cuff. I don't know if it really is that, if it ever, you said it kind of drains the energy of the other person in a good way, or maybe deflates the intensity of the energy. But it's honoring, it's honoring their, see, I'm getting so excited. My earbuds are popping out because my ears are like, but it deflates and honors them at the same time. It does hold. I love that. That was great.
And I think it comes back to what we hear people say a lot, right? Like, which is you have to hold space. And how do you hold space for someone who you're really struggling with, or whose like vibe is not your vibe? Part of that is just allowing yourself to be that strong, clear channel for it to come in and move out. And I do, I could talk forever
Well,
about this
good.
stuff,
You know,
but
we still, so I know you want to do a longer meditation. We still have
yeah,
15 minutes in the meantime, at least. So
yeah.
keep talking.
So let's talk about the central channel piece.
Okay.
So part of my training as a Dragon Tree Illuminator is really about understanding how energy moves through our bodies, right? And so what we have that runs basically from our perineum, like our root chakra, all the way up to our crown chakra, through the middle of our body is what we call a central channel, right? Like that's how the energy moves up and down. That might be similar to Reiki. I have not been trained in Reiki, so I'm not sure. But when I think of it in this community sense, that like we have to do our own individual work to make sure that's clear for us. And then the impact of that, the like butterfly effect, the resonant effect, when we're with other people, when we have a clear channel, is that ability to hold space in such a different way, because we don't have any like gunk or crud that's like getting in the way of it processing. And so a lot of when I think about releasing energy or I lead meditations around it, it really is paying attention to that cleansing, the cleansing of the channel, and like calling it in from all parts of our bodies so that we can release it out and compost it. And I use the earth a lot for that because, I'm an earth sign.
Well, and I think it's important. I mean, so from the air sign perspective, grounding is not my norm.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely recognize the benefits of grounding and being grounded. And so for me, it's the need to be more conscientious of it. I can't, and trying to make it into a routine for myself is something that I'm doing, but it's not a natural thing. Going out into nature is a natural thing. And there are certain things that I do that automatically ground in some ways. Although sometimes I wonder if I'm maybe more of, attuned to the fairy realm when I'm in nature. And that is earthy, but it's not necessarily grounding in the in the way that maybe
I get
mean.
you. Yeah.
There's something I want to connect this to, and I don't know how well I'll do at it, but when you were talking about it's our responsibility, our energy is our responsibility. I love that. And I also think that most of us probably never got that memo. That because I don't think there's really been a huge amount. I mean, emotional intelligence may be the closest that I can think of right now to recognizing the impact our energy has both on ourselves but others. And taking that responsibility seriously. I mean, it doesn't have to be like begrudging or a bad thing, but recognizing that responsibility, I think, is a huge mindset shift in terms of self. I've lost the word, but self.
Yeah. Well, I think we're kind of like, we're kind of taught and conditioned that we need to rely on other people to fix us too. Right? Like we actually have sovereignty. We have total sovereignty over our body, our energy, our way of being in the world. But as we grew up, we learned that and there are reasons why we rely on our mothers and our parents to raise us and to provide us with these nurturing environments. But at some point that information has to be transferred. Yeah. And I think you're right. I think that we rely a lot on other people to help us to manage our own energy. And we all know the kitschy sayings that like, you can only make yourself happy. You have the only approval for yourself. But when it comes to the work of it, that's what's really, really hard, right? Yeah. Like
the how.
We can say those things, but then how do we do it? And especially for someone who's experienced trauma and doesn't want to be in their body to process it. How do you start to integrate some of those things?
Yeah. And the fact that I keep hearing or have heard, and Lauren Anchuafermo, who was here last week, she didn't talk about it in the Hocus Focus, but one of the things I know from her Body of Light program is how much we have been taught to believe there's something wrong with us that has to be fixed. And it really puts us in an external focus that somebody else has to make us aware that there's a problem with us, that in order to manage ourselves, we need other people to help us to do that. And so I think it really relates well to what you're saying in that many times we just aren't even aware that we have so much power, and that sometimes it's recognition or fear of that power that keeps us from maybe even allowing ourselves to release that kind of energy that we may be holding. And so I just kind of switched gears there, but that's a big one for me, is like, I don't even think it's so much about, I mean, for me, it's really about, I think I have a huge fear of my own power, because for most of my life, I disowned it.
For sure. I can totally get behind that. And that's, you know, for me, I think the journey into this has been, I think we all had periods of time where we maybe did feel connected to it, and then we drift. Yeah. And I think that's normal, right? Like that there's an understanding, and then there's a drifting, and then there's an understanding. And then like once there's the understanding, there's like the layers of understanding.
Yep.
You
yes.
know?
Lots and lots of layers.
Yeah. And I think so much of it is rooted in this fear, right? Like this fear of, if I really understood my power, if I was as powerful as everyone else was telling me I was, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. What responsibility does that come with? We almost like blow it out of proportion, right? Yes. That like, if we actually embrace it, if we, you know, if we were able to listen and tap into it, then I'd have to do something, right? Like there's this fear that I'd have to do something amazing with it, but you don't. Like you actually, it's just there for you.
Right.
And I think sometimes there's the fear of like, well, if I uncovered it, then I'm going to have to use it for someone else. Mm-hmm. And I don't know where to start with that. Like, I don't know how to use this with someone else, because, you know, we've been taught that we have to serve and we have to do these things for other people. And for me, it's been really like working with that fear mm-hmm. of, what do I do with it then? Well, you don't have to do anything with it. It just is. And like, that's the cool thing. That's the power.
Well, and it will emerge. For me, the fear is that I'm going to hurt someone. And I don't know why I have that fear, probably movies. And I keep thinking of Harry Potter in terms of, you know, his whole journey is he starts out like, this is so cool. And then he ends up with this huge responsibility of fighting, you know, the bad guy and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
For me, it's that I think that I recognize this power that I had when I was a little kid, and it scared me so much that it made me think that it was a bad thing. And I don't feel like it's bad, but it really is facing those fears now, because it's like I can feel it inside of me and it wants to come out. And then granting that permission, I mean, how do we even do that? How do we get that that power? If we talk about the power aspects, how do we encourage it out? How do we release it? Because I think it's easy to, and I'm not saying you said this, but I think it's easy when people say let it go, that just, you know, I mean, that started a whole big practical life journey about how do you let go? How do you surrender? Because I don't know. I never learned that part in school.
Yeah. Oh, these are such good questions. And Megan, I think a huge part of it is what you're doing in this community. Like, we actually have to be supported, even though we're responsible. I think we do have to have support that says, yes, keep going. This is good. Like, again, like same with that reflective energy. When we see it in other people, we absorb it, we let it in. We can do that in this community too. We see the power in someone, we allow it to come through us, and then it just channels out. And it's not just stuck there.
I'm just feeling that. It feels really good. And I love that idea, because community, I think sometimes has a warped definition when we look at societal. What is community? And what I see more and more, especially from women, but doesn't have to be, but a different sense of community, one where we really are there to support one another and encourage one another. I know you do that in Whole Mama Project as well. And the that support and encouragement and lifting others up instead of feeling, you know, competitive or jealousy and all those other things that other communities sometimes have. This, you know, I'm not trying to diss masculine energy, but I think we're way off balance with it. and societally speaking, that it's time
Yeah.
for more harmony between the two. And this is one of the ways that I see a real benefit, because it's like we can accept each other and recognize the power each of us holds within, and appreciate that uniqueness and encourage it to come forth.
Yeah. And I think that's so tied even to how we hold energy in our bodies, right? Like the masculine manifestation of energy is creativity, productivity, doing things, like the getting the things done, which is needed.
Yes.
And we all have that.
Yep.
But then the piece that we forget about when it comes to creativity is the receptivity, right? Like the opening, the show me, the allow this to be. And I think that's the piece that's missed with the let it go conversation, because people are like, let it go.
Right. Okay,
Like,
it's gone.
Name it, let it go. Yeah, but unless the softening to it, like the receptivity of, okay, what if we were just soft to the things that need to come out, and to be like exploring the pieces of us that need to be healed and released. And if we soften to that and allow our intuition to guide what needs to be shown and released, it's a different process. It feels different than like digging and like, trying to find it and then pulling it out.
Well, and it takes away that sense of urgency, I think, and that urgency that's so time-based. I need to get it done now. I don't have time for this, that kind of thing, runs counter to, in my view, both the creative process, but also just the process of release. Because sometimes things just can't be released because you will them to be released. They have, there is some type of process, and I believe it's a very physical aspect. It's maybe a combination of physical and emotional and spiritual. But for me personally, going through a lot of releasing over the past year, I've come to recognize the physical sensations of that process, and it feels like a bubble for me that's coming up from my root chakra, and it's a big bubble. It's kind of like indigestion, but not quite, because it's in other parts of my body too. And it's like, okay, here comes something that I know I'm working through, and that's a good thing. I'm happy to work through it. It may not always be comfortable.
Also, I was just like lighting up as you were talking about how you process your energy. Like it feels like indigestion in a bubble. I just had an Akashic reading last week, and that is totally how it worked. And I don't know if you've heard this before, but when you're processing energy, like you burp a lot, and that's a way of it like coming out. And it was insane how this was working, but really that's feeling it like in your gut and then having it move out. And when I'm doing work around energetic release, I actually see strings of like pulling strings out, and visualizations are powerful for me. I know it's different for everyone, but like the pulling out, and then once I was done healing it, it was like this like big burp.
Awesome.
And then there it was.
Wow. I hadn't heard that is a physical effect of moving energy through our body. So that it explains a lot, because I'm like, what did I eat? I'm like, I didn't change anything in my diet. Why all of a sudden? I mean, even last night this happened. I moved some kind of energy out. I have a Qigong, like online course that I do some things with. And yesterday I did a healing meditation with it, like a sitting healing, and I haven't done it in a while. And I'm like, at first I went to the, like three-dimensional, what did I eat? What was going on? But something went through me. And then I realized it was due to that Qigong practice. And my husband's like, whatever it was, you should do it again. And I'm like, yeah, but not until after my live, because it's like, it was painful, but there was so much going on, and I could visualize internally. It was like this big, kind of like a black ink kind of thing moving through me. And I'm like, that's different, because usually if I have some kind of physical ailment, I don't see it that way, but maybe that's changing. But for this particular thing, I'm kind of surprised right away I didn't recognize that it was an energetic thing moving through. But
well, and especially if you were doing Qigong, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Well, it was a kind of day where it's like, what was I doing? It took me a day to reflect on it, So I want to make sure we have enough space for your meditation. You'd already given us a couple of techniques, which I'm really thankful for. I think they're helpful, but I am
Yeah.
thinking you still have one more thing you wanted to do.
Um, there's a couple other
Okay.
things, and we'll just kind of practice them too in the meditation.
Okay.
So, we kind of talked about them a little bit. I think the other one is really just body-centered releasing,
Mm-hmm.
and and like really visualizing where the energy lives in your body and then playing with it. So if you have, let's say, a block in your confidence, sometimes that manifests right, like, in that solar plex area, but like bringing your attention to it and seeing, like, is it a zipper? Is it like a cap? Is it something you screw? Like, what is it? Is it a balloon? And then like really just playing with making it bigger and smaller and bigger and smaller to manipulate it. And that is, again, like allowing yourself to have that sovereignty, that power over your energy. And I found that to be really, really powerful. And even thinking about when you visualize the object, is it moving in a certain direction? And can you reverse it?
Mm-hmm.
Can you take it out of your body, reverse it, and put it back in? Can you do different things to just play with where it is, how it looks, which direction it's spinning? And so that's really a really powerful technique too, and can be guided, but you can absolutely do it on your own.
Well, I'm really excited, practically falling out of my seat again. It's like, let's do it.
Yes. Yeah. And so what I will lead you through in the meditation is really setting this individual toroidal field of energy. And so you can do this in community too, but the way that I'll lead it today is so that we can do it on ourselves. And it involves some of that rooting, that like being connected so we can compost out, and then like allowing what needs to come back in to come in, and clearing out that central channel. So this is something you could do, every morning or every night before you go to sleep, or if you're really feeling like stuck or distraught, or like you just need more clarity, this is a good meditation to come back to kind of clear it away and then come to the question again. So we'll do that.
Okay.
Any questions before I start?
Not for me.
I'm trying to think of anything else. Okay, let's do
All
it.
right.
So just getting comfortable in your chair, closing down your eyes, and just bringing your awareness to your breath. Just noticing your belly rise and fall with each breath. Letting everything settle like sediment in a glass jar with water, just settling all the way down to the bottom. And now just imagining a taproot growing down at the base of your spine, down through your chair, into the foundation of the building, down past the rocks and the sand, and into the cool soil beneath you. And just noticing the sensation as that root meets up with the soil. Pushing past the dirt, mingling with other roots and critters as it makes its way deeper into the earth. All the way down until you meet the earth's core. And now feeling that root wrap itself around the core of the earth. And just tugging you closer pulling you down into that warm, loving, abundant energy of the earth. Feeling the stability of being planted here, of being held and supported. And now tracing that root back up through the layers of earth, up through the foundation of the building, up through your chair, tracing it up your spine, all the way to the top of your head. And now just imagining a funnel opening at the top of your head. And it opens to a beautiful white light. And inviting that light to stream in down through the top of your head, down through your central channel, through the middle of your body, and then out through the root at your base, down into the earth. So visualizing this white light just clearing away anything that's gathered in that central channel, pushing it down through that root, down into the earth. Just paying attention to this cycle, kind of like a French coffee press. That white light just pushing everything down, the gunk, the sludge, down through that root. And once you've cleared that out, the energy coming down through your head, out through the root, we're going to reverse the light. So pulling back up through that root, anything that needs to continue to be processed. Whatever's left from the compost, the good stuff that you want to soak back in, soaking that up through the root, feel it going up through your central channel, out through the top of your head, and as it comes out the top of your head, just visualizing it like a fountain of light. And watching that fountain crest over the top of your head and drop around you like a bubble. Like you're sitting in the middle of a golden light bubble. And that light arcs and drops into the earth again, collecting the energy you wish to receive, pulling that up through your root, up through that central channel, and then out again over the top of your head like a fountain. And just follow this light path, exploring its perimeter as it drops around you in all directions. Noticing what you're allowing to come through as you pull the energy from the earth up into that root. And then noticing any energy that's collected to be released again as it makes its way through your central channel and out through the top of your head. And just allowing this cycle to occur until you feel clear. You might want to play with reversing the energy again. If you feel there's more, you need to surrender and return through that root into the earth. And when you're ready, just placing one hand on your heart space and one hand about 2 inches above your belly button or your navel. The hand that is above your navel is setting a new baseline. It's receiving and transmitting all of the information about what was released and all of the openness and expansiveness that is now available. Sealing in this more clear, expanded, open, empty vessel ready to receive. And now moving your attention to the hand over your heart space. Just giving gratitude, compassion, and witnessing what might still be there. And it's okay if there's still stuff there. And feeling the connection between this baseline from your lower hand and your heart space. Allowing these two spaces of our body to be connected and to communicate and to receive as we move forward. And when you're ready, you can go ahead and open your eyes.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome.
Now I'm very grounded. Thank you.
You are welcome.
Are you comfortable with my
Yeah.
pulling this out as a clip and sharing it?
Please.
Good.
Yeah,
I
you're
think
welcome
that would be
to
really
do that.
nice for people to be able to just grab the meditation as well as listen to the whole thing, but not only have to always listen to it to find the right place for the meditation.
Yeah. You are welcome to take whatever you want.
Thank you. Well,
Yeah.
Kori, it's been a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. I thank you for your time. Thank you for, again, sharing your wisdom, your beautiful energy with us. Thanks again, and I wish everyone a magical, mystical day, week, month, year, and so on. Thank you again. Peace.
Thank you.